I was just wondering, what are you thinking in terms of main developments and generative AI in particular?
Yeah, so generative AI is the big new thing, isn't it? I think if we're tracking the history over the last kind of 5 years, there was interest in AI and machine learning beginning to build up. And then ChatGPT, DALL-E, that kind of thing came along. Generative AI became the new buzzword. People could see how powerful it was. Yeah. And that's when interest exploded. And what's really interesting, I think, from the IP perspective, when you're talking about generative AI, is that it's really easy for companies to integrate this technology into their existing products, into their existing workflows. And so you can take a third-party service and you can get that generative AI capability into your product really seamlessly. So it can seamlessly integrate, and it's straightforward. And the question then becomes, well, if I think I'm doing something really clever with generative AI, how do I protect it with a patent? And it's becoming pretty obvious that trying to rest your patent, your invention, your clever bit on the generative AI just isn't going to stand. It's not going to be able to hold that weight because it is so straightforward. It is so seamless to integrate. And so actually where the inventive activity will lie will be in the way in which that generative AI model is used, the way in which it integrates with other systems. And one of the things that we've been discussing over the last few months, which I think is really interesting, is then the affinity that there is between the use of generative AI, which we're beginning to see within the patent space, and taking it back to computer-implemented inventions and the way in which they're used. If you think back to the early days of computer-implemented inventions, and it's still the case now, you can't say, well, I'm doing this on a computer, and I've got this computer, and that's the clever bit. The clever bit is the way in which you interact with the computer, the way in which that computer is used to produce some further technical effect, to produce something clever. And so this is going to be the same with generative AI. How is that generative AI model used in a clever way? How is it integrated with existing systems? And so when you're thinking about the way in which you approach a patent application or a claim towards this kind of technology, the generative AI model kind of almost pushes into the background in the same way as a computer-implemented invention pushes into the background. And so it kind of comes to what we're seeing coming out of the patent offices, particularly the European Patent Office, that AI should be treated in the same way as any other software-implemented invention or computer-implemented invention. And so, for generative AI, is that the case? Absolutely. It's just going to be kind of software plus, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think the main bit there is really, if you're solely relying on generative AI to perform the function which it's there to do. So if you just say, right, I have some data, I have some text, give me the output, you're not likely to get something patentable from that point. It's a pretty much clear case of obviousness. You've asked the machine to do what it's expected to be doing at that stage. Whereas I think the really interesting point, especially when you see around the innovation side, is what people are actually doing beyond that. So it may be the question of saying, well, I've got this problem which I need solving. I know generative AI can help me, but I might need, so for example, more data sources. How am I going to be able to get a more useful answer out of the generative AI model to say, okay, the solution to my problem is this? Or the flip side is that you could just ask the generative AI and you get your solution from it, but then you do something further with it. So it might just be the case of saying, okay, I've asked you to label my data set in a particular way, and it's done it in a very clever way, which may be the case. But subsequently using it also, I think, provides that real kind of important, innovative aspect to it, because it allows you to move away from just merely using the generative AI in the way it was intended, and actually provides a real kind of clear solution or a neat solution as to what the problem is that you're looking to solve.
Yeah, and so if we drill into that a little bit more, right, and put a bit more kind of meat on the bone in terms of practicality. If your client came to you and said, Diego, look, I've got this new invention. It uses generative AI. What's the consideration I need? What's the important thing I need to know here?
Yeah, so I think really the the interesting part there is, so there's always kind of two questions or two aspects you'd need to consider. One is really, what's the use of the invention? You know, what is it you're trying to achieve with the invention there? If it's something which is going to be, well, I'm using generative AI in this really cool way, but it's for a banking method, then unfortunately, at the European Patent Office, as you know, it's probably not going to fly at that stage. But also, it's kind of, how are you using the generative AI? Where's the real heavy lifting in this invention occurring? Is it the fact that you've just asked the generative AI to do something which you expect it to be able to do, and you're just taking that output and using it in its normal way? Then yeah, I think there you're going to come into more problems. Or is it the question that you're using it in a really clever way so that you can either manipulate the answer which you come out to be more useful or more tangible to what you're doing, or are you subsequently using that answer in order to help you solve a problem further on down the line as well? And I think those are the key issues which we're going to see in generative AI is there something more here than just saying, right, Google, give me an answer?
Yeah. And it's exciting because it's early days.
Oh, it's amazing.
We're at just the beginning of it.